Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on an Okuma Classic XT. This is a smaller frame reel, inshore ocean type fishing, lakes, pier. It's a conventional reel with the level wind feature. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take this apart, we're going to service it, and we're going to get it out there fishing again, giving it a second chance. And we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces and parts. And as we do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you do like the art of fishing reel repair. If you like to see how to service reels, maybe you're thinking about starting a business, maybe you own a business and just want to expand the types of reels that you're servicing, or if you're just the individual who wants to do it yourself, that's kind of what this is all geared about. It's about taking the time to show you how to do it yourself so that you can keep those fishing reels going, and we'll give them a second chance. Well, we're working on an Okuma today. And Okuma is a US-based company, or at least Okuma USA is based here. It's out in California. And the Classics have been a nice, affordable reel, good price point, and they last. Well, you're seeing here one of the ways that I take a handle off. And the handle is difficult to kind of rock back and forth. This one's got a lot of salt and other debris kind of stuck underneath that handle nut there. And instead of trying to lever it, rocking it back and forth and damaging the shaft, what I'll do is I'll use the star adjuster as a lever point to push it up from behind. And that, I don't know where I learned that, but I learned it and it works and it's all good. So what we'll do is we'll take that off. We'll try and clean up a little bit behind here. And overall, I would judge this condition of the reel as not having been serviced in a while. And that always leads to problems downstream, some of them like that, where you may not even be able to get the handle off because of that issue. Okay. We have a level wind reel. We have it backed with some tape here, so they probably had some braid on it. We're going to leave that on there. The initial testing of the reel, clicker works, back spool works. I'm not sure if this is an auto trip or not. I guess we'll find out. We'll take it off. I'm not going to roll that all the way back then again. But initially, everything was kind of going according to plan. So let's continue taking off the exterior parts. And this is a good place to tell you, take pictures along the way. Sometimes you'll be able to find things on YouTube, like my channel, that says, well, you made a mistake here. How do I undo my mistake, or how do I get it back on track? But if you take the pictures along the way, you'll have a reference point, and that reference point will help you if you get stuck. Well, getting stuck, I got 4 screws here that have a lot of green on them. They're the side plate screws. They should be going into a graphite case, so they shouldn't be rusted into the case. But I'm going to just take the extra precaution of putting some penetrating oil on each one, and hoping that maybe if they are stuck, they'll get unstuck that way. And when I take these out, I'm going to lay them on the table because I want to make sure that all the screws are the same size. If they're not the same size, we're going to note which one was longer or shorter and how it came out, because when you go to reinstall, you have to put it back where it came from, unless they're universal and they're all the same size. I learned that the hard way on a Shimano reel. There was a short screw in one place that I replaced with a longer screw, and that screw interfered with an internal trip. So you just have to be careful to make note of the things that maybe just seem easy enough but aren't. These 4 screws are all the same. I'm going to take them and I'm going to put them into my parts tray with all the other pieces. My parts tray is the bottom of a fast food container, and it's served me well. We have the 4 screws out. We should be able to remove the side plate. That was easy. We have a bushing on the spool here. We're going to pull the spool. When we pulled the spool, the drive came off of the spool. That's okay. It may or may not have been held on by a C-clip. I don't see anything holding that on there. And there's 2 screws here and a bushing in the back. So I'm not sure if we have a bearing under here. So right now, let's go right in and answer that question. Is there a bearing under there? If there's a bearing under there, we want to put some oil on it. And if it's not, we just can walk away knowing that we're okay. Well, there's nothing under there. So all this is doing here, this is just holding the click ratchet that's going to make the noise when the clicker is on. In some cases, particularly with lever drag wheels, there's almost always a bearing under these little shields. But this is one way to make sure you're doing the job completely. So we'll go ahead and put that right back on. There's no sense taking pieces off and just throwing them in your parts tray for no reason. And then we have our little click ratchet that's going to go on like that. This is metal. It's going to be driving a plastic one underneath here. And while we're at it, I think let's just go right over to this side. It might be easier to do it this way. I haven't worked on one of these in a while, but there's more than one way to approach the reel service. You could do the gear side first. You can do this side first. You can do it however you want, but do it completely is kind of the net of this thing. But as long as I have this open and exposed, sometimes it's easier to push the side plate out if it does get stuck if you do it with the spool out. And all you want to do on this side, there's nothing really to lubricate or anything in here. You just want to make sure it's clean and that you put a little bit of grease onto that bushing. If it was a bearing, of course, you would want to oil that. But in this case, this one doesn't look like it has the bushings there. All right, well, this came off easy enough. Here's your drive. It's clean. So there's not much to do. What you can do, and I always recommend this with level 1 reels, is rotate your idler gear. That's the plastic piece here. Rotate that and check the teeth on the small gear as well as the larger section and make sure that they're all there, because your line drive will not function properly if any of those teeth are damaged or missing. Alright, well, that was easy enough. This one has a removable worm drive gear. You can put a little bit of grease on that. You don't need to grease the plastic ones. And of course, I knew that was going to happen. We just knocked that off, but that's okay. Just put that back. And that's held in place by the side case. I have that open. There's a washer that goes underneath here. Then there's the gear. And there's a little bit of dirt on the inner side where this spool is going to ride, so we might as well take care of that right now as well. All right, let's just put that right back on. Just trying to find the top for this. Tops on bottoms always work well. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and put these back on. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, just leave those questions in the comment section. It doesn't have to be about this reel. Use this comment section to do that, and I will try to get you back on track if you're stuck, or try to give you additional information if that's what it is that you're seeking. That is, of course, assuming I know the additional information. I get a lot of questions I can answer. I get a lot of questions I can't answer. So regardless, I will try to do my best to do that. Well, we got a case that's not set up, that hasn't merged in the line guide, so I need to back this all off to reset. Don't force anything. If you find out that it's not working properly, just take your time. And we're going to just rotate that until I can get it to seat properly. There we go. And then we'll just put this back together again. What happened was there's the teeth on that black idler gear that you saw, and there's teeth on the line drive that you saw, the worm gear, and they weren't meshing, so that's why they were sitting high. So all you have to do is back it off. I turned the inner gear there, got it to mesh in, and then we can close the case up. Well, this case has got a lot of dirt on it, and I try to clean the reels in addition to just servicing them internally. So when I do that, I like to use a rod and reel cleaner to do that, and a kitchen scrubby. That generally takes care of the old grease and debris and the like. I use Pen rod and reel cleaner. It's kind of both a cleaner and a wax. It's not a lubricant, but go ahead and use that. It'll clean it up nicely. And now we just need to reset them. With the case reseated, we could go ahead and place the spool back in there and turn our attention to the gear side. We'll come back and service that pawl in a little bit. Alright, so this has 3 screws holding it on. This one holds the bridge on, and these 2 hold it to the assembly. So you're going to have to take all 3 out. There's no real easy way to manage these. In some regards, it's a little difficult. It's problem I've had with the mag lights too, the Okuma mag lights. But we're going to need the handle here. Use the handle as a wrench to hold it so that you can loosen up the bridge screw. Now I'm laying these on the table as well. I want to make sure that they're the same. Those 2 are. I know they belong on the wings. And then we have the big one in the middle here. The big one in the middle has a washer underneath it. And we're going to take those and put those into the corners. Now we can remove the backing plate. This is the washer there that I was referring to. And then underneath here we have pretty much a setup that's fairly common for these reels. Take a picture before you go any further, because that way it'll help you to reset this. Notice the position of the dog. The dog is in a down position, and it inserts here. This is your yoke, your click ratchet and main gear mechanism, and your jack assembly, which we will remove now. There's a small screw that holds that to the eccentric. That's what we want to take out first. Make sure that you put that into your parts tray. This is your jack. These all have to get cleaned up. Notice that the yoke on this one has the springs behind it, not in front of it. Take those 2 springs off and get those into the tray quickly, because those springs have a tendency to get lost or shoot, and you don't want to find yourself in that position. Next up then, you're going to have to remove the anti-reverse dog here. That's got a little spring that's attaching on the outward post. Just going to use the pliers to do that. I think it's all going to come out together. That's okay. Just push this through. This is your gear assembly, your anti-reverse dog, and your case. And we want to clean up the old greases and oils that are in the case. So again, I'm going to use a penetrating oil as a kind of a degreaser and a cleaner. I don't use penetrating oils for lubrication, but I do find that they work great as a cleaning agent. There we go. I think we got all the old stuff out of there. Grab my paper towel and kind of mop up. I still have that anti-reverse dog flopping in a breeze there, not to worry about it. Alright, that case cleaned up nicely. I want to do the same with the yoke. Now notice I just kind of haphazardly pulled that pinion gear out, but I did it for a purpose. I want to share with you, if you're in this position, how do you know which side of the yoke goes where? So the yoke has a ramp on it, and that ramp is going to get pressed down by the jack. The jack in this one comes over the top. Take that off now. But you're able to see it comes over the top. So it needs the ramp on the front end of it to push it down. So that's the front, and then the part that accepts the spool faces forward as well, and that's the one with the ring and the slot, not the main gear side. So you want to take the ramp side and this side to install your pinion gear. Before I do that, I'm going to check the teeth. They're all clean. I want to make sure that they're all uniform and they're not chipped or cracked or anything. If that was the case, you'd have to go get a replacement pinion gear. I'll get a nice brush of grease on that. I'm going to do the same thing where it merges in with the pinion gear and the yoke. And that's how it goes. Slanted side facing you, slot facing you. Now we're going to our parts tray, put those 2 screws back on, or springs back on. I said screws, I meant springs. I always do that for some reason. And then we go forward with that. So that's the way that your yoke is set up. And now we need to service the gear side assembly before we go any further. This is going to face forward on the reel. This is a good place to take pictures so that you know the part's orientation. There should be a Teflon gear, there is, or a Teflon washer behind the main gear. That goes on here next. Make sure it's nice and clean, dry, and so on. And we're going to clean the back of the gear, and we're going to remove the drag stack. There's one more in here that needs to be removed. Nope, there's 2 more in here. These are felt washers. So felt washers generally need to be kept moist. These are certainly moist enough. I just want to remove this last one if I can. If I can, I'm not going to worry too much about it. There you go. Yeah, so you want to keep these moist so that they're nice and flexible. You want to make sure that the cavity of your main gear is clean. You want to do the same thing we did with this gear that we did with the pinion gear. Check all the teeth, make sure that they're uniform. And this one's dry. And I kind of guessed that because of the way that we saw the dirt on the outside and some of the other stuff. There would be an indication that it hasn't been serviced in a while. Just wipe off the excess. That goes on to the main stack first. And then we have a traditional 6 drag washer setup here. We have a thicker and a thinner keyed washer. We have the 3 felt washers. The first one is the broader one because it has to sit over that raised lip. I oil felt washers rather than grease them. And what we'll do next is we're going to take the first of the keyed washers, and we'll do the second of the felt washers. Again, give that a good drink of oil, keep it nice and fresh. The middle washer is the one that's got the circular center and the 2 tabs on it. That's called an eared washer. That seats like that. We'll go with the last washer now. And again, a nice coating of oil on there. And then the very thick one goes next. Then we have a series of compression washers. These are bowed. They're called tension washers, or sometimes called bell washers. They're not flat washers. Don't flatten them out. They're a crescent. I like to put the first one with the crescent facing up and the second one with the crescent facing down. There's other ways you can do it. That's the way I like to do it. Then there's a flat washer that goes on top of them. And then there is the little spacer on the sleeve. This goes in next. So you insert that in. And make sure everything else kind of stays in place with your pinion gear assembly. If it came off, don't worry, just reset it. It needs to mesh in. And I see minor issue here. We got to get the anti-reverse dog out of there. I kind of forgot that I left it in there. So let's back all of this up and do it again. Take this out. Rotate that anti-reverse dog out of the way. Now if your anti-reverse dog is off, don't worry, it's easy enough. Go ahead and put the main gear back in. Take that anti-reverse dog off, it's easier that way. Put your main gear back in. Put your pinion gear on with the ramp side out. Mesh your pinion gear and your main gear. Press down on that. Get your anti-reverse. Get your jack, your free spool jack. Press down on that. Get the small screw. You might need a micro driver for it. This one, for some reason, this tip on my #1 Phillips head seems to get the job done. If you have an issue, go for a micro driver. And that's what you need to do to install the gearing system. So let's just go over what we did here. That's your main gear, pinion gear, yoke, ramps up, and we're in good condition here. Now a lot of times I like to take the star adjuster in this case and put that on now, because that's going to hold the main gear in place as I try to set the back end shield and the anti-reverse dog. If you took your pictures, you remember that the anti-reverse dog was facing down and that we had a spring that goes around this post here. So let's get the down facing first. Just like that. And let's grab that spring. I'm going to use a little pick for the spring now. I'm just going to grab the lip of that and pull it towards the post. And this always takes a few tries with me, or most of the time it takes a few tries with me. Guess I got to get the spring on the right side. There you go. And if you're not seeing it, I'll apologize in advance. It's kind of hard to work the camera and the spring. That's your setup for your anti-reverse dog. That anti-reverse dog sits in one of the cavities. It's lodged on this post. Spring comes out of the back side, goes to that post. Alright, we should simply be able to take, this is famous last words, take our cover shield then, place that over the top, center it on the posts for the mounting. Now this one isn't in all the way. There we go. You have those two screws that hold the post in. So let's go for those next. And because I have that star adjuster on the front end of it, I don't worry too much about that main gear moving as much. That's another one that's just kind of been learned from this exercise. When you do enough of these Okumas, you kind of get to understand the pattern behind them. Let's get that one in place. And we have our two little shield screws here. The first one's a smaller one, and we have a larger one. And then we have the screw that goes into the main gear post. And that should be the reel from a gear side perspective. You can test it after you get this tight. You give it a spin, and everything seems to be doing what it should be doing. Okay, a little bit of grease onto the shaft of the spool and tighten this up now. That was a nice tight click. I like that. Find the 4 screws that hold this side plate on. We haven't cleaned this side plate. We'll do that in a moment. We're also going to service the pawl on this before we end this project. But more importantly, right now, we need to make sure that the mechanics of the reel work before we really go too much further. Now, I didn't notice anything that seemed unusual, like binding or that, so sometimes you can kind of skip the step, if you will, but it doesn't hurt to get this right. Now, this one has a setup that's very similar to the others, but this does not have an automatic trip to reset your free spool. Several of these reels have that feature. This one does not appear to have that. On the ones that have it, there's little studs sticking out of the main gear. All right, we're going to put that in gear, and we're going to turn it, and everything's turning fine. We're going to bring this over to the side here so that we can service the pawl. The pawl is held on by a cap that has a little slot in it, so that's the next piece to remove. And then if you generally just tap down, you'll be able to get some clearance on the ridge to pull the pawl out. There we go, it fell out. And this is important. You need to test and examine that pawl. You want equal points on the pawl, and you need to clear the dirt from the shoulders. And this one's got dirt on the shoulders. You use a little utility knife just to clean it off. But if you leave that dirt and old grease on that shoulder, eventually it's going to start skipping on you. All right, we can take that and slide that in. I like to seat a pawl by putting pressure onto that and turning the reel. And then you know when it starts to move that you've got it seated properly. Let's take that cap again, put that back on. These are plastic caps. Don't over-tighten these. If you over-tighten them and crack them, well, there's no easy way to repair that. It needs to be replaced. All right. Do as much of that by hand as you can, and then just a snugging turn of the wrench. We'll take our scrubby pad with the rod and reel cleaner on it. There's still stuff on there. Clean that up. Get our paper towel down. Get the rest of that done. And now we can just simply put the tension washer up between the star adjuster and the handle. The handle knot. Good news is I'm looking in my parts tray now. There's only 2 pieces left, and that's all I should expect to see left at this point. If you are using a parts tray or whatever organizational system you use, and you find that you got some parts left over, well, that's always the worst feeling around. The second worst feeling around is looking for a part that you know you need and it's not in the box. And that's usually a spring or something that may have shot out. So there you go. All right, that's part one, and the other one is the tie down screw, and then we'll give it a test here to make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. We'll get this out there fishing again. All right, there you go. That's tightened up. Drags are tightened down. Give it a turn. Works beautifully. Now you have a spool tension adjuster on this one right here. If you need to, you can tighten that up. That one seems to need a little tightening. You can loosen it up depending on how you like to throw your reel. You may feel that you want a little bit more free spool. Back it off a little bit. That one's working good. Again, this does not have the auto trip, but boy, that sure as heck is working nice. The only thing I'll leave here is that a little bit of oil onto the worm gear, which I didn't do before, and we'll complete the service on the Okuma Classic XT. It's a lower profile reel, perfect for inshore, lake, boat, pier, and the like, and nice reel overall. This one's ready to go fishing again. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. I truly appreciate everything you do. And to everyone, get ready for the spring season. Get those reels tuned up. Make sure that you're ready to go. Our striped bass season just opened up. I'm ready to go. I hope you are too. And if you're not, take the opportunity as soon as possible to do that, because you never know when that first run is going to happen. So we'll To all, I wish you great fishing. Take a friend along, teach a kid to fish, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.